Hey everybody, Travis Pfeiffer here, coming at you for an Opus 14 Final Fantasy trading card game set review, and I am joined by Mr. Eureka himself. It's Jared Wallace. Jared, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming on with me. You know, I've done these reviews in the past since Opus 10, and usually I do them with my good buddy Alex Scott of Mysidia Gaming. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do them with me this time. However, he is responsible for that awesome thumbnail you're going to see attached to this video. So, Alex, thank you so much for all your help and everything, but I'm more than happy to have Eureka here. We know what a master he is at working at the game, so I'm sure he's got some great insight for us.
I'll do my best.
Excellent.
Always a pleasure to be on.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's get right into it. So we're going to start with the first of kind of a line of cards that there's one in each element, and these are our primal activators in the backup. This one's Amal'ja, and you know when a fire job primal enters your field, you can activate Amal'ja. All of these cards have, when a job primal of that element enters, they reactivate, and then they all have an action ability, usually tied to their theme. This one's going to do 1,000 damage. The Earth one will give 1,000 power. The Wind one's going to reactivate. So these seem really fun to me. They're multi-playable. So again, obviously you're going to play these if you're playing those primals. Beyond that, they're no use to you. But also, it's very nice to see the 14 theme as someone who's played a lot of Final Fantasy 14. It's cool that they got all the beast tribes in it. And for those who don't know, lore-wise, the beast tribes are what actually summon these primals. So it's very appropriate they're here to assist them. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that this the whole cycle is just great. Some of them are like a little more suited to being played than the others, just because like for like the fire primals or the water primals, you're really gonna want to play them in the same deck. Whereas like the lightning primal, it's a little unlikely that you're gonna see like both of the lightning primals in the same deck, or it's at least a lot harder to build those ways. So yeah, I think Amal'ja is just sick because it works really well with Susano and with Ifrit, and yeah, I'm sure it'll see play.
Awesome. So moving on, we've got Ifrita. So she's 7K, and she searches out other Ifritas. I don't know, I love the artwork on this. I've always liked kind of the WoF style artwork, but I just feel kind of about this card.
So I know that some of the other players are pretty high on this card because it's, you know, it's an EX burst, it's a kill EX burst that also gives you a +1, and you know, like, there's not been a whole lot of these kinds of things historically. They're pretty sparse, or they're pretty hard to go off. Like Odin 3, where it kills a 2-drop, but you have to kill the 2-drop to get the draw. So this one's a little less conditional. The big problem is just like you have to play Ifrita, right? You have to play the other Ifrita. It's not been a great card, and while it's true that there's like a lot of Ifrits that are very, very playable in Mono Fire, like, you're gonna notice when you're like struggling to find room for Amaterasu and Belius and like Bahamut and some of these other like a little bit better or competing with the other Ifrit slots. So I think it's a very solid card. I don't know if it's like a sick card, and I think the condition is a little bit higher than people are thinking it is right now.
That's fair. All right, so moving on, we have finally another version of Illua. So we have 6 shoals in a deck. We got to try that, right? You know, she's really cheap. She's haste. What's interesting, too, is with her ability that when she attacks, she's not going to be that weak. You can dull however many backups. You know, you can essentially pay 4 for her and make her, 12K, I think. And then, you know, you can also nuke something for that same amount of damage. Seems really strong for a 1 CP card. And in particular, I've heard a lot of people saying, hey, we finally have a great target for the Zondi legend from Opus 10. And yeah, I definitely want to try her out. Fire Lightning was already a good element combination last Opus. So doing the 6 shoals, I mean, it's arguably the best special in the game. Is it worth it?
I agree. This card is basically limited to Mono Fire and Fire Lightning. I'm not really sold on 6 shoals. Fire Lightning is absolutely, it's so strapped for slots, which is really like the biggest problem that it has. And I can't imagine that you're actually going to be able to fit 6 shoals into a deck when like it was hard enough to like play like 3 Illua and like Lightnings and stuff like that in the deck before. Like a really versatile, nice card for Mono Fire, though. People mention it's a Zan target. I'm not as big on the Zan. I just don't think that the card is great in general, but that is a nice bonus. If you were going to play a Zan deck, this would probably be a great target for it. But yeah, it's just like, it's really versatile removal. It's a really cheap threat. It's on the lines of Rain from the last set, where it's just like it's really cheap and you can't let it stay on the board. You have to kill it, and it still killed something before you removed it anyways. So,
right.
Yeah, I think it's just a great card.
Awesome. Okay, what is not a great card is Warrior of Light. I think James Lockwood said it best when he revealed it. He was like, well, if you like a worse Warrior of Light than the one from Opus 1, this is the one for you. That's all I have to say about it.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to Olde Leonis. I haven't played Brave X War of the Visions much. I just started it. Yeah, so when he's put from the field to the break zone, you get a standard unit back. I mean, in general, I just don't like cards that they have to die that turn in order for you to get their effect, so I'm not high on stuff like this.
Yeah, it's a pack filler card, and maybe there's some kind of it's playable in some kind of pauper situation, but yeah, it's not gonna be making any waves in any other constructed format, I think. So,
well, someone who may make some waves. So this is our first primal. This is Ifrit, Lord of the Inferno. So it's interesting, all of these primals have an additional text to them, and it's kind of annoying because it just takes up spot on the card. But I also understand they couldn't have just called him Ifrit, because then he would benefit from all the other cards that have Ifrit ties. So I get why they had to add the primal extension on all of them. But yeah, so he's going to boost all of your summons or abilities. So when he comes in, he's automatically going to do 5k. He'll make your Blaze now do, it's a 6k, I guess, double ping. Yeah. And he's a burst. That's really cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think this one might actually play a little better than I'm anticipating. Maybe I'm just so burned out, no pun intended, on all the fire effects. It does more damage. It does more damage. So to me, stuff like that kind of blends together. But he seems like he's going to be. I think he's going to be strong. I don't know. What do you think?
I think he's great. It obviously works really well with all of your other piecemeal removal. So you can combo with Blaze to kill any 2/4s in the game. Basically, he'll be able to snipe down Ursula, so Serah Mobius when he comes in, force the Ursula effect to go off. And obviously works really well with the primal backup, because now the primal backup will tap to deal 2k instead of 1k. And he'll reactivate those, so you get more of those. And then he also works with, just rain and stuff. You just deal an extra 1k. Yeah, so rain is just going to deal 6k on the swing. Elo is going to deal, gets an extra 1k for free. So she'll hit the 10k margin at dealing 3 backups instead of 4 backups, which is big. And it has EX burst for for no reason. Yeah. I'm not sure why it has EX burst. But that's gonna be great for Axe-Star padding and stuff like that too. So I think it's just great.
I hadn't even really considered what you just said, but when the way you said it, the idea of putting him down. Let's say you have 2 of those Amal'ja backups, 2 of them come back up. Now you can play your Blaze more easily because you just got 2 backups back. Yeah, that's a really cool combo. So interesting. We'll see how Ifrit, how much he burns up the scene. All right.
Yeah,
next.
and one thing. Amaterasu goes to 9k with this. For some reason, it also buffs your summons, which isn't something that we think about very often. But this means that Amaterasu will just cleanly kill Lock and stuff like that. So
that's a great point. So yeah, maybe I did undervalue this card. So a card that I did definitely didn't undervalue for the artwork is this Garland. Whew, it's so beautiful. I love that his eye, the shining cross, is just and his hand is man, he just looks so cool here. And it's a neat card, too. I'm not the type of person who wants to be killing a bunch of my own backups, but what's interesting is the draw isn't limited to, once per turn or only your turn, just anytime someone's backup goes out. And then he's got that Ysayle protection where he basically only kill him in combat. He's not going to just be taking random damage. And, man, Flare seems like a really good special, too. So a lot of hype about this card, and it's easy to see why.
My one thought on the artwork is that it's so Final Fantasy, isn't it? It's this is what we thought about Garland when we first played the games, this is what we had in our head. So I really think this is a bang up job on the artwork for this Garland. But yeah, the effect is really sick. You can search him with Gawain. He doesn't have any searchers in color. You're gonna have to use Meath or whatever for that, or I think more likely to see play is he's going to be comboed with Earth, and you're going to see him searched out with Tyro, I think. And that's going to go hand in hand with, his auto ability. If you're breaking your opponent's backups with Fenrir or Hackathon Chair and stuff like that, it's going to go with that really nicely. In terms of drawing off of your own backups, Mono seems like the place to be there. You'll be able to use the like Geomancer, Blaze, and Kojin, the 4 CP
yeah.
backup we're going to talk about in a little bit later. And these are all going to be just like they're fine effects by themselves. And then if you get to draw an extra card off of it with Garland, it's just going to be great. The S ability is obviously insane. There's nothing more to say about it than that. If you pair it with Earth, you'll see more of that because you'll have Kusith and effects like that to recur Garlands in your break zone. I think if there is ever going to be like a 4 CP 8K like black belt stats that saw play, like this is probably the card that we need to see. But I'm not quite sold. I need somebody to destroy me with it before I'm like on board for like main decking 3 CP Hekaton chairs and stuff like that, you know.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to see what he does. All right, now we have Caius. This one just seems like pack filler to me. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's pack filler. Yeah, I'm really sad that a nice category 13 card got treated like this, but you know.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Thus is the role of Caius in this game. Here we have Garland, which, until damage 5, he doesn't do anything, but he's a cheap backup being put down early. And just in general, the whole afford can't be broken effect is very strong. You can do this on their turn, so again, you can basically cancel out a battle phase. So yeah, he seems nice.
Yeah, Gabranth is pretty nice. It's the first time we've seen him in Fire, and it's a fine card. I think it'll see a lot more play in L3 and L6 than it does in Standard probably. In Standard, you're going to be hard pressed for slots to find to play this, but it still might be like one of those nice one-ofs that you see slotted. There's basically no name issues if you're playing Mono Fire. So
yeah. All right, now we have Gutsco. It's been a while since I played. I think he's from 4, or is he from 3? I think he's from 4.
From 3.
Oh, he's from 3. Okay. It's been a minute since I played that.
He's like the most unmemorable mid boss fight ever.
He's got a neat effect though. Like in particular, I kind of feel like this is what the Cloud of Darkness Dark card from like Opus X starter pack wanted to be. It's nice that again, just once he leaves, no matter what, you just get all those cards back in your hand. So in theory, you could, just keep piling them up. And I wonder what he does for your opponent. Like, is he a threat you do want to remove because you don't want him to get a bunch of cards? He obviously suffers from Cucullin syndrome that if they blink him before he dies, and you just lost a bunch of cards for nothing. But I mean, and I love the Amano art, so he seems interesting, worth trying.
It's a little early to make calls like this because we haven't even played pre-release or whatever. But I think this is like the best card in the set. I think it's actually I think that this card is just absolutely insane because it's a Magisa target. There's no like straight out search for this kind of card, right? But like if you just open it in your opening hand, you can just pitch 2 to play it, and you're always going to get your CP back. It's like that's not okay, right? I don't know. I think that this card is the only counterplay to it is killing it on the stack before it enters, or Cucullin, and I don't think that either of those are like really consistent answers to this kind of proactive threat. And then like I said, it also is just incidentally like shoved in there with like as a Magisa target, and I'm not looking forward to just playing against like turn 1 Magisa Palom Gutsco, and then I'm just taking 2 damage every turn. I have to kill the Magisa, otherwise they're gonna do more Magisa combos, but I also have to kill the Gutsco, otherwise they're gonna have like a billion cards in hand. It's gonna be. I think this is gonna be like format defining levels of value on an aggro board. Yeah, I think that this is like the card to be playing at the start of the
Interesting.
set.
Well, I totally underestimated Magisa when she was debuted in 12, and she ended up being incredible. So maybe I'm underestimating this guy too. So all right, you heard it here first from Eureka. We'll see if he was right or wrong about Gutsco. So next we have Susano, Lord of the Revel. Noble souls, I salute you. That's like my favorite quote of his when you're doing the trial. When I first saw this, I was kind of like, wait, isn't this Philia? Didn't we just get Philia? But obviously a few key differences. He has haste, so he can immediately go in. Don't overlook that part that says anything that gets killed by him gets removed from the game instead. So he's going to cancel out any break zone triggers that you have. Obviously, you got to put a backup away, but the more I think about him and some of the kind of little combos you can do, the more I like him. When I first saw him, I was like, I don't know, he's just like Philia again, right? But I don't know, I'm actually warming up to him the more I think about him.
Oh yeah, I think that this card is great. I think it's a lot better than Philia. I think Philia suffered at the end of the last Philia like declined really fast in like how good it was. It was like absolutely great we wanted to play it in like most decks that could when it was released. And then by the end of last set, it's like if you're filling a board of like Ursula, Serah Mobius, and Sophie, like you just lost a bunch of CP, right? Like, they're just gonna make the board again.
Do you think it was too expensive, or was it the self damage, or?
It's just too expensive. 8 is just too much. And I think that's where Susano looks like way better. Not only does it cost 2 less, you're getting CP back if you have any of the Amal'jas out, and I think one of the key synergies with this card is the red 13 backup.
Oh yeah.
So you can just play the red 13, pay a fire, put the Susano down, and then break the red 13. So it's just like Susano, red 13, and 2 CP to play the red 13, and then 1 CP to activate the ability. We'll just clear any board immediately. Just no questions asked. And I think it's great. I think that's the kind of like power level that board clear needs to be on if we're going to be pushing cards like Sophie and Serah Mobius and Gutsco for that matter. And I think maybe now with this card in, we'll start to see, like Hojo breaking your Ranjit to get back the Susano, and you can do like all of these Fire Earth combo, kind of like cool combos that don't really feel like they belong in, like basically like all the combos that we've done up until this point are like win combos or Cloud Pod, and I think now we're starting to see like with Red 13 and Hojo and like cards like this and powerful ETBs, but also like cards that have their cost reduced. You start to see like combos that like work with the break zone and work with cost reduction that aren't just reactivate your backups or just sack a card and bring out another card. And I think this is a cool part of that. Nice. Kind of strategy as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to try him with the Garland. Good partner for him. Garland won't take any damage.
Oh, yeah.
And you get to draw off of it, so good stuff. Noble Souls,
works great.
We salute thee.
Yep, works great with Earth, too. You can search it with the Tyro.
Yeah. So
works with the Hojo.
Going in with the Beast Tribe theme, here we have the Kojin, and again, there's going to be one of these in every set, and they're all based off of the Beast Tribes from 14. The Kojin are actually, they go with Susano. They are the ones that summon him. He is their primal. And so I have to admit, I've actually gone down a little on these when I first read them, only because of my own fault. I read them incorrectly. I thought it was revealed to you pick one, put the other one on the bottom, but you actually lose the other card. The other card goes to the break zone, and that's both when it enters and then its scry effect. Regardless of that, it seems like a generically just good card for any kind of mono deck, especially because it's multi-playable, which is really nice. But when I did realize that you lose that other card, part of me was a little like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that. So this one, I don't know. Like, and again, I think this one may be element dependent. I think certain elements will like this better than others. What do you think?
I think the best one is the fire one, because fire is just real. There's no backup search, so it's always struggling to get to its early backups, and Kojin is going to help that just a little bit, and that's probably just enough. Because right now it's just Dominion Legionary or nothing or bust. Like it's totally all or nothing on that. And I think Kojin is a nice in between. Obviously, also works really well with Garland, and I think in particular the Fire and Ice ones might have a little bit more merit because when they crack and you put a card into the break zone, it also helps fuel Celsius, which is not really something you think about all the time, but it might be like more fringe playable in that regard for specifically that interaction. But I think that they're just solid. I think the worst one is probably the Win one, because Mono Win is just completely full of like search for everything, all the backups, and there's just no room for it. The Water, Lightning, and Earth ones are kind of like 50-50, and I think the Ice and Fire ones are probably the best in my opinion.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I guess we'll see how they do. All right. So next we have this kind of line of monsters. This is the Koboldroid Yang, and all of these monsters have when they enter the field, at the end of your turn, you put a monster counter on them, and then you can break them at any time to do whatever times the amount of counters. In general, I have to admit I'm not very high on a lot of these. The only one that kind of sticks out to me is the Tonberry, and I'm not even saying he's necessarily good, but I like the idea of him having 15 counters on him, and then you get to just look at 15 cards and go, ooh, what do I want? Little library effect. But similar to the monster counters from Opus XI, which I really like those guys, but unless you see them early, they're not going to do anything. Like, you don't want to see this mid game. You don't want to see this late game. What a dead draw. Like, cool if you can see it early and immediately start stacking up about a bunch of counters. But even then, like, I don't know, Matiski and I talked about this about monsters in general, and that it still just does things a bunch of other cards do, like this. It does, damage. Okay, so many fire cards do that. Why am I playing this over that? So, am I wrong about these? Do you feel any different?
No, you're not wrong about them at all. They're all more or less garbage. The only one that's kind of cool is the Tonberry, because, like you said, it's a new effect. We don't have that kind of effect, But I guarantee you that when another card that's not a monster gets this effect, it'll be way better. And then and then there's just like nothing there for the Tonberry. So it's pack filler, and the Tonberry looks cool, and maybe the Tonberry is the most playable of them because you can always pop it for something.
Exactly. At minimum, you'll get a single draw.
Yeah, the other ones are just not there. So
another miss on monsters. All right, here we have arguably the best standard unit in the set. This is Samurai. He's a samurai, so he's brave. He's probably always going to have 2,000 power. You've got a really bad board if this guy isn't a 3 CP 9K. And then his extra effect, too, obviously if you see him super early, maybe that's not going to hit. But, like, even without that entry effect, the fact that he's just such a big body and then he's going to fulfill your Cyan requirements and your Tenzin requirements, I feel like that alone would have been enough. So the fact that he potentially is like, oh, and he might nuke something for 9K when he enters, like, what? Oh, the card's crazy good. All right. What samurais are we taking out for this guy?
I don't know if you're going to drop any samurais, if you're just going to just put this in the deck but over something else. But if you are dropping samurais, it's Hien and Gosetsu. Those cards are really, really bad. And we play them because we have to, but maybe we don't have to if we play this. I'm not sure. I haven't done the math on it. It's a great card. There's not a lot more to say about it than that, I think. There's going to be some debate, as always, about whether it's better to play, mono fire big guys or samurais. And that might kind of decide the fate for whether this actually sees a lot of competitive play or not. But, if samurais are popular, I'm sure that this will be a part of it,
A lot of those decks still do run. Huge, and a lot of those decks still run Ayame just for numbers, so he's going to be gone in a heartbeat.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Next, we have Zenos, who is technically not our box topper, but like our cover art for Opus 14.
Yeah.
And I didn't think he got a very good card in Opus 8, and I have to admit, I don't like this one at all either. It feels like a really lame version of Nail. You reveal 5 cards. You can add 2 14 forwards, but then you lose the other 3 cards. They just get dumped. And then beyond that, the only thing he does is if he attacks, category 14 forwards get hit. I don't know. I don't like this card at all. I've heard some people think he's got potential, but I don't like him at all. What do you feel about him?
I think that there's some potential there. It's really, really hard to put enough 14 forwards into the deck for this to hit reliably every time. But if you can, I think that this is it's kind of what Verstale taught us last set, where dumping cards isn't necessarily a bad thing if you're killing your opponent really fast and you play Celsius and discard and stuff like that. So I think that the Zenos dumping the extra cards is actually fine as long as you're going to get the 2 cards from this. And obviously it works really well with Verstale. So I'm not sure if we have the card pool to support Zenos and Verstale in just Fire Ice alone, because then you end up playing cards that you don't actually want to play, Filia maybe and Ranjit, which don't suit the Verstale strategy at all, but you might have to play them just because they're hits for Verstale and 14 cards. But I think that the card, the effect itself is really good as long as we have the card pool to support it in the Fire Ice Verstale deck.
Right, that's fair. Right, now we have Geomancer. This is kind of one of my sleeper hits of the set. There's always some cards that don't get revealed until the full set reveal that I see that I'm always like, hey, this is pretty cool. It reminds me of the backup Fire Ninja. He's basically a combination of the backup Fire Ninja from Opus 5 and Yotsuyu from Opus 8, in that you can either just do the ninja effect, break him to give something that it can't block, or you can dull him and pay a fire, and then you choose something that can't block, but that can be used repeatedly, which to me is kind of crazy that you can repeatedly do that. Is he going to take any slots in any decks? I don't know. That Ninja's always had a habit of sneaking some games in certain ones, so especially if you're trying to do a mono fire rushdown deck or something, I could see this being by the way, because then again, it's always that threat of he doesn't even have the cost restriction, I don't believe. Yeah, that Yotsuyu has. So it's just, you're always going to need an extra blocker, kind of like Snow in some sense. I don't know. I feel pretty high about this one. How do you feel?
Very solid card. Probably, again, one of those backups that you're going to see played a lot more in like L3, L6 than you're going to see in Standard. I think if you have the room for it, then it's just it's very solid. It's worth playing. The only thing is, like, right now with the card pool that we have for fire backups, like, it's hard to imagine that this is going to be taking slots over, like, you know, Zand, Blaze, like the other options that are available. But if you are looking for this type of effect, this is like the best one that we've had so far. It's just like, it blows Ysayle out of the water, it blows a ninja out of the water. It does both. It's also a standard unit, so
seems like he'd be really good and limited, like one that could really steal games.
I think Fire's looking pretty good and limited right now with it, as always. But this is definitely going in my cube, you know. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Now we have Great Mono Art, Mom Bomb. This is our second line of monsters. All these monsters are centered around mono effects. So they all, if you control 3 or more of their element backup, then it also becomes a forward. And then Mom Bomb, I love the art of this card. I really wish the death effect didn't also hit your own forwards. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to like tune fire that way. A lot of stuff is like hitting your own forwards now. I love the art, but I don't know. This is probably one of my lesser favorites of this type of monster.
I was pretty high on this card when it was revealed, and I still think it's better than a lot of people are giving it credit for. I just think that right now, if this feels like no play at all, then it's just because Fire has so many so many good options that it's kind of like choosing from the best of the best.
Yeah.
Whereas like if the 2CP 8K was available in like another element for this, it would be like played like so fast. It's like not even close. But Fire just has like so many quality forwards to choose from that maybe the Mom Bomb isn't cutting it there. I still think that there's a chance that it sees play though. I think it works pretty well with like random combo stuff like Shantoto 6 or whatever, but also just as a solid 2CP 8K with the death ability to keep you from getting bursted down.
Yep, fair. All right, and here we have Maliris. This is a chaos job. I think all these fiends are just a complete disappointment. You want to pay 6 CP to do 8,000 damage? Like they all just do effects worse and more expensive than other cards do. So I think these are all pretty junk.
Yep, it's the same as just like the chaos cycle from a few sets ago. It's just like they're just pack filler for if you want to play like a cool theme deck on the kitchen table. That's like this is right up that alley. But there's no shot that we're seeing any of these played in competitive play. So
absolutely. Here we have Red 13. You mentioned him earlier. A lot of hype around this card. Whether he's going to be good or bad. He's definitely an interesting card. It's a neat idea. Obviously, you want to use him with something that has an ETB that way because you don't care if it sticks around after that. You mentioned the Susano earlier, so definitely excited to try this guy out. It's just cool. It's always cool to have cards like this with, again, unique effects that even if they don't end up being like super competitive, hey, at least they gave us like something new to try.
The best use cases for it are like when you get the big ETB trigger and then you can use it to do something else. So most of the suggestions that have been brought up to me are, like Magic Pot, Cloud Pod, Hojo. Those are like the 3 big ones right there. But I think even if you're just triggering the ETB, if you're triggering the ETB on a card like, Fusoya or whatever, then you're probably going to be getting your CP back there anyways. So, I think it's really... there's going to be a lot of use cases for it. I think it's really unique. I would be really surprised if this didn't do some like really degenerate stuff at some point. So I expect to see a lot of this card around.
The only thing I think will hold this back is timing, because I can see myself like, well, I've got it, but I don't have the fire CP, or I don't have a forward I want to use right now, and so I'm like in this weird timing window. To me, that's like the biggest how that will work out. So
it's a backup. So like once it's on the board, unless you're Susanoing it, you don't get to play another one. So you can't build like an entire deck around Red 13 alone. Unless you plan on breaking it and then recycling it. And I'm starting to see like the Fire Earth Susano deck is coming to fruition in my mind with this kind of card. So use Garland to draw cards when you break it, and do all sorts of stuff.
All right, well, that'll do it for fire. We're going to move on to ice, and just as kind of a heads up for these whole reviews, we will be skipping over some of the cards, the ones that have like similar effects, so we're not going to 100% comment on all of them. First up, or next, we have Ysayle in ice. Only thing I like about this card is the artwork. It clashes with the backup Ysayle, which is Ice's Searcher. And then to me, the only time this is worth it is if you're putting it in on their turn. Because if you're not putting it in on their turn, why not just play the 5 cost outright? Like, why play this? And that also means, like, you have to play it, it has to survive a whole turn, you have to choose not to attack so that you can then dull it on their turn. Like, I don't know. I love the artwork, but it just seems awkward.
Yep, I think you hit just about every point there. Combining or overlapping with the Ysayle backup name is just like a big no-no in the first place, because now you can't search all of your targets for it. And, if it got like static haste from a backup or something like that, then I think, it could be useful for something. But waiting a whole... We saw this with Eshentarl,
yeah.
Which this one, the only thing that this has up on that is that you can do it on your opponent's turn, but you still have to wait a whole turn for it to survive, and it's not something that happens very often in this game.
All right, now we have Valfodr. He is the ice version of these. He's, as ice tends to be, he's a little understated at only 7k, but he does discard when they go to the break zone, so I'll probably try him in mono ice, but I could also see him cutting him pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the one that makes the cut. It's probably a solid, one of inclusion, just because ice has Nagmalata.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to search it out if you have any other monsters, and it'll help field cards like Titania, and that's an important part of ice's strategy in general. But it's not really comparing to the wind and water ones that we'll get to in a little bit. So.
All right, here we have Kam'lanaut. I think this card's really cool. I've heard a lot of folks say, oh, these too many sets too late. Hey, whatever. I'm just glad they're doing some mono stuff. And again, I think he's the only card in this set, or he's one of the only ones that has that on entry and on attack. So he will have that continued threat of, hey, every time you dull or something, I'm going to be blasting you. So I rate him pretty highly. What do you think?
If Mono Ice sees any success to set, this is going to be a big part of it. I'm totally sure. Having a card that kills something when it comes in and then continues to get value afterwards, no matter what kind of value that is, that's just a good card most of the time. So I think Kam'lanaut's great. Historically, these kinds of effects have had, in Ice specifically, have had trouble because they can only target dull things, and that's sometimes an issue. However, we are seeing a lot of additional ways to get dull effects specifically on forwards, more or less at like less than a CP's worth of cost. And so if you're combining that with Kam'lanaut and you're playing this kind of like long-term taxing board control strategy with Ice, this is definitely going to be like right where you want to be. The S ability is great too.
Yeah. So next we have the Gilgamesh legend. This is our ice legend, and this is very much not a mono card. This is the opposite of mono. This is just super colors. I'm curious to know if you like this guy, because I have to admit, I just don't like him at all. Like, obviously, if you ever get to, your Supreme 7, you're attacking 3 times, you're dull freezing 3 characters, sounds amazing. But even then, like, the fact that he only gets 1,000 in first strike, I could very easily situation cards are getting stronger. They have 2 9Ks sitting there. They could literally just block you and kill them anyway. Like, I don't know. I don't like this card at all. Do you like it?
No. I really don't like... Well, I mean, like, I don't want to say that I don't like it, because it's cool when people, like, do cool stuff in the game with these kinds of cards. But, like, this is not one of the cards that I can rate and be like, oh, yeah, man, this one has a great competitive shot. Because, like, I know if it ever, like, competes with whatever the tier 1 archetypes are going to be, I'm going to open my 5 cards and be like, I can't play it in my cards.
Yeah.
And I'm just not down to play decks like that for the most part.
Yeah, not my style. Yep. All right, here we have Bard. This one's fine, just kind of pack filler.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Kuja, God, very much pack filler. Like, isn't the Opus 1 Kuja better than this guy? I think he is.
Yeah. Yep. Opus 1 Kuja is better than this card, and yeah, it's really sad because the Dissidia art on Kuja looks great.
Yeah, I do love the art.
It's totally wasted on this card.
Yeah.
So.
One that is not wasted. I've heard very mixed opinions on this, but I love this Kefka card. The fact that it's an EX burst, essentially could prevent a damage. The on-entry Dull, it might be useful for, but to me, it's the fact that, yes, it requires 5 backups, but repeatedly, you can Dull Frieza forward, even on their turn. There's no other cost to it. Like, I think that sounds really cool. I already love that Crystal Exarch from Opus 12, so I'm totally going to try to build a deck around him and Kefka. If you're still using Opus 4 Lock, here's another 6 ice backup for it, which is really cool. So I'm super high on this card.
Yeah, I think that this card is a lot better than some of the other people in the community have been rating it, I think. I haven't been a mono ice gamer since like Opus 7, I think, when like mid-range ice and turbo ice were both really good at the same time. I played a lot of mid-range ice, and this card would be like, it would have been sick in that kind of deck the time. And I think that now things have been crept enough that this kind of backup is, passable. But I think you're actually going to get value on the enter ability pretty consistently because of cards like Kam'lanaut, like capitalizing on dulling your opponent's forwards for relatively little cost. And so it looks like the EX burst doesn't matter, or it looks like the entry ability doesn't matter, but I think you're actually going to get value on it more than it would look like on first glance. And then obviously the action ability is just fantastic, just totally great. And if you start resolving, like the more times you resolve this in a game, the more likely you are to win the game, I'm pretty sure. So.
Absolutely. That's my SNES Kefka laugh. Here we have the Emperor,
that's
which
what it sounds like.
if you like this, you're gonna have to tell me, because I don't like this card at all. Like, if this card could be cheated in on their turn, I could see it, but dumping 15 ice cards from your break zone and then even then he might draw a card. I mean, it's characters, there's a good chance he will, but still, and then he's a weak body. Like, I didn't like the Opus 12 Emperor, and it's only during your main phase. Like, I don't know, I don't think this card's good at all. Do you?
I'm like 100% sure that 15 was not the first, like the first iteration of this, or the first like 3 iterations of this card probably did not require 15 to bring it back.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that like until it was 15, this card was broken probably. I'm 100% sure of that. So I think that you're more than likely only going to be able to get 1 or maybe 2 activations of this card over the entire game, but it is a pretty big CP swing when you do it. So it's obviously limited to specifically mono ice, and it's also limited to, the CP swing has a higher chance of missing if you're playing extra summons.
Yeah.
So if you're like trying to support Titania and stuff like that. But in terms of just like a completely free forward, I think 15 is fine. And I think I would be surprised if we didn't see like just one of this card pop up in mono ice. I think it will be just like you just play 1, and then you treat it as just like a potential free CP swing, and then that's it. And if you just resolve it once, then it was probably good enough in the slot.
Gotcha. I'll try him with Crystal Exarch, but I guess that's the other thing that bugs me, is that if you don't bring him in by an ability, he doesn't even get the effect. Like, you can't just cast him normally. So I like the idea of like as a one of, and so I'll give him a shot, but I'm not expecting much. Okay, here's a Goblin.
I think it's okay.
Okay, yeah. Here's a Goblin, ice version of this monster. It's not very good.
Yep, no, it's awful. It's actually worse than the fire one, I think.
Here's a card that got a lot of buzz. This is Chivalry. This is our ice summon. So obviously the big brain plays people are seeing is like some kind of board ping via Barrel Eye or Susano or whatever you're choosing to use, Fina and Ice Wind. And then not only are you wiping their board, they don't have to discard however many cards from their hand that forwards they lost. Will that ever actually work out that way? I'm not sure. So like, I don't know. I'm kind of like tepidly cautious of this card, but I'm not. Some people are like, "This is the best ice card I've ever seen." So I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle on this guy. How do you see him?
I think just as a normal combat trick that also makes your opponent incidentally makes your opponent discard a card. It's a great card. And then also, like a very small percentage of the time, if you can get them, like really get them, then you're gonna get them with this card. Yeah. But I don't think the primary use of the card is to make your opponent discard a bunch. It's just try to combat check your opponent. And I think very specifically, this card is great with Barrel Eye because yes, your board clear is really like if you clear the board with the Chivalry combo, they're going to discard a bunch of cards and you're going to win the game. But also, it's the 3K buff to your forward is really important for Brawley in particular because he's a really popular Ifrit and Amaterasu target, and this is going to put him out of range of both of those, and you're going to be able to continue comboing. And I think that's where the card is really going to shine. Is with Brawley in particular, I think this card is kind of egregious. I don't think it's broken necessarily, but I know I'm going to get got by this a few times, and I think that it will be part of the Wind Ice set for sure.
Looking forward to it until I'm on the receiving end of it. I'll be like, oh, fuck that card.
Yeah.
All right, here we have Serah. Cute little artwork, but again, more pack filler.
Yeah. More 13 cards being done dirty.
And here we have Good King Moggle Mog, Good King Mog Kupo! One of the most fun fights I thought in 14, Thorn March Extreme. He has, if you've ever heard his theme, it's very reminiscent of Halloween Town from Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah. Man, like, maybe in the future this guy will be good, but like I just don't think there's enough support for him right now. Like there's not enough Moogles, in particular Moogle forwards. I think there's only 3 Moogle forwards that fit this cost, and 2 of them are the Mog from 6. So technically there's like 2 unique ones. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think he stinks, honestly.
Yeah, card sucks, but there's a lot of potential there in the future, right? Like there's a Japanese player, Petit Yan, who put it very succinctly. He's like, Good King Moggle Mog is Tenzin, but Moogles don't have a Cyan. Yeah. Like they just don't have like the support there to make it happen. So I think in the future, if you can like fill your deck with like 25 Moogles and then this guy and get value out of him every single turn, and there's another Moogle worth playing that like a Cyan or whatever that makes this kind of like card playable. Then the card could be really strong in the future, but like right now it's just like total garbage tier, and there's nothing to build out of it without a bunch of Moogle forwards,
right?
Whatever that would look like. In chapters, there was the Moogle 14 was a 2 CP forward. You could put as many of them as you want in the deck.
Oh wow!
So you could just like the deck was like, I think 16 like of the Moogle forward, and then they got like plus 1k power for each job Moogle you controlled. So you just put a bunch of Moogles onto the board, and that would have been like the perfect fit for this card, because then you would never have to worry about like your Moogle count in the deck. If you felt like you were short, you would just put some more in. It's not a problem. But given the current card pool, it's just impossible to play a deck that actually makes use of this card.
And in the game, his little minions are his Moggles guard, and they even have like unique traits and personalities. So like they'd be ripe for cards. So again, if we ever get those, maybe he'll be decent. All right. Next we have Proto Fal'cie Adam. They call him Adam. I think this card's okay. It's got that kind of built-in protection, which is nice. Again, is it going to be worth a slot? I don't know about that.
So this was our, like, full disclosure, this was our spoiler. Okay. And so, like, I'm maybe a little bit higher on the card than some other people. But, yeah, I actually think it's pretty good. Not because it doesn't really fit the kind of thing that, like, you would be doing with Ice right now. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's kind of going to be part of what Ice is going to look like in the next set, because in the set going forward. So right now, like, Ice is kind of like a tempo deck that's like trying to choke your opponent out of resources, right? And I think going forward with the introduction of Alcid and Zero Miss and some of the other, fast forwards, you're actually going to need threats that just deal damage, and that's not something that Ice is really looking for right now, but will be once it starts playing those like Alcid and stuff like that. And so I think that this would be right up that alley. And it's also searchable with, Mog 13 and Lumina, because it's the 13 card. So yeah, it helps buffer that. And then, it's also coming out of the Alcid if you want it to. And then it has protection.
Yeah.
When it comes out of the Alcid, so you're going to be getting triggers with it. And yeah, I think it's pretty good. I don't know if it's like you're not going to be slamming a bunch of these, but I think if you're looking for like a threat that is a resilient threat to put damage in, it's just a great choice.
They call him Adam. I love that name. It's so good. Okay, here we have Devout. That's the ice version of the backup. We mentioned these already, so I'll move on to Time Mage. The only thing I find interesting about this, and there's another card, is the wording, which says when he becomes dull. So that's kind of interesting in that whether your opponent dulls him or when he attacks, he's going to get that dull. But that wording, I think, could be very interesting in the future. But obviously, again, this is kind of just pack filler.
Yep, it's bad.
Yeah. All right, here we have Don Corneo. So this is kind of like small Zidane on a backup. If they only have 3 cards in hand, then you're going to get to see everything they have. Otherwise, they're obviously going to pick the 3 that their best 3 or the 3 they're okay losing. But still, I mean, if Zidane proved anything, targeted discard is always a pain in the butt to deal with.
Yeah, I'm really high on this card. I think that this card is really great. I think it's just like exactly what you say. It's Zidane on a backup, which is not okay, right? Yeah. Like there was a lot of talk about Bell when Bell was released. Like Bell was going to be pretty good, and then it kind of fell flat because your opponent just will just go discard all of their 4+. Right. But like you can't just like discard your whole hand to dodge Don Corneo. Like you can't do it. And I think I would like to point out the flavor on this card is great because it's Don Corneo. There's the 3 girls, and your opponent gets to pick the 3.
Right. Oh, that's a great point. I didn't even think of that.
It's the flavor is just totally good on this card.
That's awesome. Okay, and here we have the lady herself, Shiva, Lady of the Frost. This is our other Ice Primal. This one is... I've actually kind of gotten a little higher on this one since I first saw it. I think her entry is very good. She's going to dull a character, and then she'll just freeze the whole board, as we've seen with like that Ultimecia. Anything that just says, hey, freeze like a whole board is nice. It doesn't target. It's just going to keep them all down. And then her action ability is... So when I first thought about it, it's like, that's just way too expensive. You don't want to do that. But I was thinking about it a bit more. I was listening to the YYT guys, and I really underestimated Nail when Nail first came out. And at the end of the game, you're happy to blow up your backups if it means you win the game, which is, I think, when you would use that. That's your game ender. Someone could swing in. You can legit block the attack, sack your backups, flicker her out. She still comes in active, so she could block another attack if she had to. She's going to freeze their whole board, dull something else. So, yeah, that's not something you're going to want to use all the time, but as a game ender, I think that could be pretty powerful. So I was kind of on her when I first saw her, but as I think about her, I get a little higher on her. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think the game ending potential of the card is really high. That being said, I'm really not happy to play this card until I'm killing my opponent. You have to be killing your opponent to really make use of the card, I think. And I'm not saying that you can't kill your opponent, but a lot of the decks that are going to be good at killing the opponent are not going to have the backups required to use the active, like Verstale, or if you're playing really aggro like Al Cid Zero Miss with the remnants and stuff like that, and you're getting a bunch of damage in early, you're never going to be able to blink the Shiva. So it's yes, it's very true that it's really good at using the backups to finish out the game, but I'm not sure that any deck that's doing that is going to have the backups required to do it, and it just kind of feels like it's not, the puzzle's not really complete there yet. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a solid card, and I'm sure it'll see play in Icefire Verstale because the active is just good enough, and it's a Verstale target, and I think it'll see play as a finisher in some of the more aggressive mid-range strategies that Al Cid uses. But I don't think we're, jamming 3 of this and playing a value game or anything like that. It's just not going to fit very well into those kinds of strategies.
And here we have, this is the Moogle 14. This is your primal backup for ice. We kind of mentioned these all earlier, so I'll go past this one. So finally, we'll end on Lugay, the Doctor from 4. Love this Amano artwork. And, this card makes me think of Fordola, because when Fordola from 8 entered, she got this permanent buff. She was a 9k haste First Strike Brave, and as much as I thought that card was cool, it ultimately just didn't really seem worth it. So with this card, and this is just 2,000 power and Brave, yeah, it's permanent, but still, I think what would have made this interesting is if Lugay was left your field for any reason, because then you could use it with things like the Shiva or Susano, some other card that got rid of a backup, and then they would have that permanent buff on it. But because it has to leave due to his own effect, it has to be based off the forward effect, I don't know, that just seems like such a waste.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things about the card. One, I think it's probably playable as just a 2 CP ice backup that gives ice a way to like just sit. Just like sit and put in damage every turn and not have to be particularly aggressive because you have the 2K and Brave buff. The other big thing is this is the first backup Lugay that we've had, which means that Barnabas can now be enabled by a backup. So you'll have a 1CP 9K. I don't think you're ever going to like want to aggressively use the Lugay on the Barnabas, but unless you have another one. And one of the big downsides that's going to come with this is that Lugay is a named backup, and you don't actually want to aggressively remove from play your backups very often. So if you're like playing a Lugay to enable Barnabas, then you have to play like 3 Lugay, but then you have 3 Lugay in the deck, and that can be a bit of a detriment to your backup progression. And so I think that this card is interesting and it's got some merit. I have the sneaking suspicion that, like the Barnabas Lugay strat is going to fall a little flat. It might be worth trying out, but I think most of its usage is going to be just going to be as like a nice, solid, self-breakable ice 2CP backup.
Yeah. So moving on to Wind, we have Adele here, a card that I really liked when I first saw it. Cool mono Wind card, but the more I think about it, I'm like, if I want to play Adele, I think I want to play the Opus 5 one, because again, the unblockable to me is like what makes it a threat. What do you think?
There's a shot that I'm going to play this card because I just like hitting my opponent in the face when I play mono Wind, because it's like not something that you get to do very often in the deck.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna play the card, but chances are it's gonna get cut. It's just too likely that there are more important forwards to play than Adele. But the stats are there. The condition is very easy in mono Wind. So solid card. I just wouldn't be surprised if it just kind of fades out very slowly if it ever comes in at all, just because priorities.
You got better things to do. Here's one. This is Abu Ka. I don't know. I only played a little bit of 11. If this guy's anything like his card, it's an easy skip because this card's terrible.
Yeah, this might be the worst card in the set. I'm not sure. It's pretty close, but yeah. There's no shot for this card. I don't even think like you play this card in limited because you need a forward, but like I don't even think you would play it in limited if you had the choice. So.
Yeah, what a weird effect. Then we have the Ysayle, which is the primal for Wind, really good. Moving on to the actual primal he supports, which is Bismarck, Lord of the Mist. Ooh, that was my awful whale impression. Bismarck was one of my favorite fights in Heavensward. He's the first primal you take, or no, he's the second primal. You actually fight Ravana first. So again, when I first saw this card, it was kind of like, huh? Like I had to read it a couple times before I really like started to think about what he did. But I have to admit, the more I read him, the more I'm kind of high on him. Just because Wind already has things like Mione, or one of my least favorite cards in the game, Althea, and it's already bouncing stuff. And what's is nice too is, man, did they give a good push to bounce this set with this and the Leviathan, and that it's not just your cards. So again, bouncing your opponent's forwards now has an additional effect, which is really nice. So the more I think about Bismarck, the more I really like him. What do you think of our whale friend here?
Yeah, I think this is one of the better primals in the set. There's just so much value baked into the card. The active ability is really good if you're playing I guess like any kind of reactivation stuff. So like it's gonna be probably pretty good if you play it in a Wind Water deck and you're just dulling Zidane and Pain and himself to ping stuff off. Obviously the draw one card is going to trigger basically every turn, and if you do it on your opponent's turn with Chocobo or Althea, you get to double up, and you're always going to get the draw with the effect, or you're always going to get the draw because he himself enables his ability. So yeah, I think that this is, it might be the best primal, but it's kind of close with the fire primals and Leviathan. So
nice. For those out there wondering, it was confirmed on Twitter. You can use Chocobo, and this goes for Leviathan to bounce Bismarck, and he does see himself leave, so you will still get his effect for it. So good stuff. All right, here we have Cacturoni, another one of these monsters. As I will caveat, I will say, as usual with all these monsters, the Wind one is always the most playable because reactivating your entire board is never anything to sneeze at, but he still has all the other problems. Yeah,
I think this one is, it might be the most playable, although it's not the most interesting, but it's got competition in Leak, Killer Bee, and Zoo, and it's kind of a lot worse than all of those. The only upside is that you can also activate your forwards, but you're just not gonna do it. So
even he knows how bad he is. He's you can see it in his face.
Yeah, it's great emote territory.
Yeah.
Like this is definitely going in the emojis, and yeah.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so here we have White Mage. I don't even remember what this does. Enters a field. Oh yeah, okay, it's a backup reactivation.
Actually, pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. Question is, there's just so many backups that do that. You've got things like Pavlov. You've got that White Mage from Opus 12. I know that's based on cast, so I don't know. Does this one beat any of those out?
The big problem with this card is that like, if you're going to do stuff like this, like for infinites or whatever, you're going to need win CP. So you're not going to be able to reactivate the win cards, which means that you're not going to be able to like play Mune or like Riku or like stuff like that. So it's not, I don't think it's as good for combo as the other options that we have available. However, I think that this one is obviously way less conditional than the other White Mage, and it's way less conditional than Pavlov. If you're playing it in like a non, like mostly like if like 60% of your deck isn't wind and you actually have like a good split of backups, then this one is probably a pretty good choice. And I think in like L3, L6 particular, this card could be really insane. Yeah,
that's fair.
Free backups are always good.
You know what? You'd almost say it's so good it's a sin, but that's our next card.
Oh.
Man, I wasn't sure if we'd see a non-dark sin. So for those of you still trying to make Giga Graviton a thing, you Exodia lovers out there, here's a win version. So there you go. It's it's not going to junk up your hand. And for basically a black belt, a stat stick, I like this card a lot. It to me immediately comes to monks. Ursula isn't going to be able to do all her shenanigans. There's not a whole lot that stops action abilities. And then again, as we all know, auto abilities run rampant in this game. So the fact that you could, in theory, cancel multiple auto abilities in a turn is really strong. Expensive, of course, yeah, but I have high hopes for Sin. I hope it doesn't fall flat, because I can see the downside, but I'm thinking this card could be really good.
Yeah, so I think that the biggest problem with the card is just slots. Obviously, you're not going to be able to slot this into like Wind Water or whatever, so it's basically only going into Mono Wind, I think, or maybe Earth Wind, but that's also a deck that's really tied up for slots. Mm-hmm. The upside is like, so Mono Wind is a deck that doesn't have its own board clear outside of like Fina, which is like kind of been power crept enough that it's not super CP efficient. So most of the time your game plan is going to be play a bunch of forwards for free and then just like use that value and accumulate the value over time to like push over your opponent very gradually. And I think Sin is really, really good at supporting that strategy because it makes it harder for your opponent to play. And also it stops all the board clears, the really expensive board clears like Susano, Shantoto, Titan, Leviathan. All of these you can just pitch 2 cards from your hand, or if you're floating any CP, you can use a floated CP, obviously, but you can just pitch 2 and it all gets shut down. So I think that the card is it's definitely like super unique, and it's well suited to Mono Wind's strategy. But it is also a black belt, and I'm not sure if it's the highest priority. So there's some give and take there. I think it's got potential. I wouldn't be surprised if like maybe it didn't take off this set, maybe it didn't take off next set, but we see like 2, 3, 4 sets down the game, it just like finds its niche, and it's something like really good. It's definitely like one of those kinds of like cards that looks kind of timeless in how it controls the game.
Well, and right now this is only the 4th card in the game that can just outright cancel an auto ability. So well, I guess 5th with the one that'll be coming up later. But yeah, so to me that's always worth a look. All right. Next we have Sniper, similar to the Time Mage, just more pack filler.
Yep. It is worth mentioning that this one, so you can actually duel this with the Bismarck. So there's like a very small synergy there, but that's mostly for like limited or cube or whatever.
Next we have Chocomog, which is a card that's definitely going into my girlfriend's Chocobo deck. She already plays both Chocobo and Moogle backups. So for her deck specifically, it's a really cool card. Beyond that, I do have to agree, it's kind of weird that it requires you to have both a Chocobo and a Moogle to draw. Like, I think it would have been okay to just have one or the other. I'm not sure why they felt the need to have that, but for her deck, awesome. Beyond that, I have no idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion because it says on the card, if you control a job, Chocobo, or card name, and then you like skip the rest of the text and you're like, oh, I get it's either or. And then it turns out you actually need to have like a job Chocobo or a card name Chocobo and a Chum Moogle or Carne Moogle, and you're like, I'm never gonna have both of those.
Yeah.
So, like, it's maybe someday there's like one of those like cool cards that like gives you a job Chocobo backup and a job Moogle backup, and like if that ever was a thing, like this card could be pretty sick. Right now, it's just too hard to fulfill the condition for draw. That I think that sums it up.
Yep, that's fair. All right, there's Tiamat. He's our Wind Chaos. Bleh, get out of here.
Yep.
Typhon, how cool. Not only is this a card, known as Mr. Chupon in the American version of Final Fantasy VI, again, I think Wind kind of has one of the better versions of these. He's above stats and just a neat effect, not like the full tuck of putting it to the bottom of their deck, but putting it as the 5th card in their deck. Like, could have some shenanigans with that, and you're taking it off the field. Like, I like him a lot.
Yeah, I think this card is sick. It's definitely the best one of the cycle, and it's maybe the best monster we've seen since like. Actually, it might just be the best monster we've ever seen.
Wow,
I think
that's high praise.
Yeah, pretty close. Maybe at the time Puma was better than Typhon is going to be, but Typhon is just really, really sick. Obviously works really well with Althea and stuff like that, and. It seems so crazy to me that like this card is probably playable if it wasn't a forward, and then it also gets to be a 3CP 8K forward. So yeah, I think that it's awesome. I'm gonna play 2 of these. You have plenty of ways to search it in with Doned and Mono, and if you're playing it outside of Mono, like in Wind Ice or whatever, you can search it with Nagmalata. And it's going to be good wherever you put it.
Yeah, avoids break zone triggers. If it's something expensive, they're gonna have to repay to play it. And lore-wise, folks, when you play this card at your locals, you can actually sneeze on your opponent, and it's totally okay because it's what he does in the game. And when they're like, "Dude, what the hell's wrong with you?" Be like, "Well, I mean, that's what he does. He sneezes on you." So you heard it here first.
I can't get behind that in the middle of the pandemic.
Jared does not endorse that. Yeah, that's true. That's probably not. Well, maybe if times are safer, maybe then you can funga all over your opponents.
Yeah, once we're all past this, then sure, sneeze on your opponent.
Exactly. All right, here we have Naja Salaheem. Interesting card. I still don't think counters are quite there yet. Of course, Vanille, the card I thought was just absolute garbage last set. People, well, get it? You could build up those Vanille counters, right? And it's cool that she's got protection, but beyond that, she has no way to get in for that damage. So, I don't know. Maybe there's some sneaky ways to do something with this card, but right now, I don't think this is good. What about you?
Yeah, so I will say that not being chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities is really good text. The big problem is that you can just block it with anything, right? And I think maybe the like mechanical part about it is that yes, there are good counter cards like Chocolate and Edge and stuff like that, but like realistically, doubling those counters with Naja Salaheem is not necessarily the best. Like it's a good use of Naja Salaheem as the card, but it might not necessarily be like the most coherent game plan for like winning a long game.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm personally definitely going to use this with the 6-drop Rydia.
Nice.
The one that gets a summon counter, and then you get to double the summon counters to play free summons, and it's going to be so sweet. I think that's about it. There's just not enough good counter cards that this card is guaranteed to get value.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a really awesome pet card.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm curious to see the little tricks people come up with it. All right, Vanu, he's the win version of the cycle. Go ahead and move past him. Fran, oh, man, what a disappointment this card is. I don't know if they hate 12 or they hate Sky Pirates or they hate whatever. Like, it's just so plain and boring. And the immediate thing that comes to mind is there's a better card in 12 called Ash, which does the same thing, draws you a card, and then she's got some other nice effects. Like, why?
Yeah, I think that they felt obligated to put a Fran into the set. And so they did because like otherwise Mirren and Jote just like don't work. But yeah, this card is not it's not up to snuff, I think. We can basically all agree that this is kind of a pretty big disappointment, and we were hoping for, like Fran drawn in the style of this Mirren and Jote. That would be totally great. And I think everybody was like, oh man, it's coming, and then it just was not coming, and we were getting this, and just a big disappointment. Also, I just think that, we'll talk about it a little bit when we get to Vaughn, but Sky Pirates is just like HJ's punching bag, I think.
Yeah,
you just take it all out. It's like,
you want some Sky Pirates, huh? Oh, we'll give you your Sky Pirates. Yeah. All right. Speaking of Mjorn, she's up next. I mean, I guess it's fine. I don't know. I don't really even know what to think about this card.
Yeah, backup, searching backup for into Mjorn is, and you can get the backup Fran too.
This is the one that activates.
Yeah, but like the whole package.
Oh yeah, we'll just talk about the package as a whole.
It's just it's playable. I don't know if it's like the high priority for what you want to be doing in Mono Wind right now, because you're gonna want to play Northstalin, you're gonna want to play Althea, Fiona. These are just like staple Mono Wind cards, and then you're also gonna play the primal backups, right? And once you do that, I'm not sure if you really have space to play this kind of stuff. So it might be getting skipped over, but maybe it'll have something in the future. And if you are masochistic enough to play Sky Pirates, then maybe you can get some use out of these with Fran from Opus X or whatever.
Great artwork. I'll give Mjorn and Yote that.
Oh yeah. Oh, they look fantastic with the eyes and the eyes on the Roma art looks so good.
Yeah. All right, so move past her. There's Lezaford. He's like a worse version of Drake. I don't like this card at all, and he's really weak body too. So unless you got something to say, I'll just zip past him.
So the only like defense that I have for this card is that Verstale in specifically Wind, Ice, Earth Verstale could possibly play one of this card just as like a nice catch-all, but I don't think it'll be played honestly. It'll just be kind of one of those fringe playable cards in a deck because Verstale is like broken enough to support it. So
that's fair. All right, next we have our second primal. Folks, if you have not heard Fallen Angel, which is Garuda's theme from Final Fantasy XIV, do yourself a favor, go listen to that track when you play this card because it blew my mind. It has this amazing organ intro and goes to this really heavy rock band. Like, it's so cool. And how's the card itself? I'll be honest, I don't actually know. I'm not sure what to think of this card. Part of me is like, this seems really good. Another part of me is like, I don't know. It's kind of pricey and a little situational. So go listen to the song. It's awesome. And absolutely when it gets to that part where you hear, now fall, boom, slam it down. It's so cool. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I think a little pricey, a little situational kind of sums it up. It's obviously if you're like resolving the break and then it sticks around and your opponent like doesn't want to play their 9k forwards because you're going to draw cards, then it's going to be really annoying. But I'm not sure if this is, like one of those big priority cards. You're probably going to play maybe like 1 to 2 of it in Mono Wind just because you already have the primal backups. Yeah. It's just already worth playing as just like a nice little catch there and you can search it with Fiona. So if it's good, then you can get it when it's good. And if not, you can just kind of ignore it. But yeah, I don't think this is like a format definer or anything. It's just like a nice little catch-all that you put into the Mono Wind deck that sometimes you get a good amount of value out of it.
Awesome. Okay, and finally a card that I was like, not only is this just gorgeous, gorgeous Amano artwork, Rosa finally comes to Wind. She'd always been in Water before. Not that we were like waiting for her Wind and anything, but when I saw this, I was like, this art is gorgeous. And luckily, it's not wasted on like a weird effect. This is a cool card. Like, I could easily see this going into Storm. She'll count herself as either of those casts. So if she's coming in as the third, basically she's going to reactivate all your backups.
No.
Does that not happen?
No, so she has to be on the field to trigger.
Really?
So
okay.
If you play her before the third cast or the fifth cast, then the abilities will work fine. Okay. But if she herself is a third cast, then she won't trigger.
I'm glad you clarified that. Okay. Despite that, I still think this card is really neat. Obviously it's a little high rolly. What are you going to hit on that fifth card? If you hit a backup you already have, a forward you already have, it's just going to sit there. But nonetheless, like if it plays it for free, holy cow. And then she has very cheap built-in protection from abilities. Like, such a neat card on gorgeous artwork. Like, I'm sure I'm going to get wrecked by this in Storm.
This is like shoo-in for basically any deck that's doing stormy stuff. So I think I already have builds of Earth Wind, Mono Wind, Ice Wind, and Wind Water, and they all play this card because this card is just awesome. And the protection is great. The reactivation is the primary reason to play the card. And then if you get the 5th trigger and it resolves on something, you just like win the game. Like it's just like so much free value. If you're getting, even if you're just getting like a 2 CP backup or whatever for free, like that's just like so much value for nothing, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think this card is really good. I don't know if it's like jam 3 copies, like kind of good, but I think it's definitely going to be like a 2 of in basically all of those archetypes. And, maybe it's good enough that you just end up playing 3. I think 3 cast has proven to be more or less trivial in Modern Wind. With like, with Krill, Asura, Ochu, Mune, like all of these cards, it's just like 3 cast is just like a drop in the bucket. Riku, it's just a drop in the bucket. So I think 3 casts is where you're going to be hitting the big value. It's just like basically like draw, because 3 casts and reactivating your backups, even if you only have like 3 or 4 backups, is like it's like drawing a card or 2 cards, right? So it's really good.
Okay. And to clarify, but she does have to be on the field before the 3rd and 5th cast. Yes. Yeah. You count her as that cast number.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Awesome. Just want to be sure. That'll do it for Win, folks. So that is our first 3 elements in Opus 14. Don't go anywhere. We will be back shortly with a new video for you for the next 3 elements. Until then, Jared, I'll see you then. Catch you in a moment.